Welcome to In a Nutshell, the podcast dedicated to all things agricultural consulting. I'm Dylan Brush here with soil genius and ag consultant Bill Brush, and we're delighted to accompany you on this journey where we break down the different aspects of agricultural consulting. In each episode, we'll dive into the realm of agriculture through the eyes of Bill Brush, where consultants like Bill play a vital role in empowering farmers, agribusiness, and agricultural organizations. If you're passionate about agriculture, problem solving, and enjoy a little bit of detective work, this podcast is tailor-made for you.
Hi again, and welcome back to Agriculture in a Nutshell. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I've been requested, particularly by my partner here in crime, Dylan Brush, to talk about some of my travels. So we'll call it travel log for lack of a better things. And my consulting career has taken me literally all over the world. And with that, it's been very, very interesting and very, very rewarding everywhere I went. But today I'm going to talk about probably my first excursion into the international consulting. I had done some talks overseas before, but this was actually going on a consulting trip. And it all started, this is kind of a long story, but I think it's fairly interesting. Started here around Modesto, California, where I'm from, and I'd worked for many years for a company that grew many, many different types of vegetables and had a lot of small plots that we did a lot of work and were really successful, I believe, in giving them good quality and good consistency. Well, how did that get me out of this country and clear over to the Philippines? And that's where the story will begin. Person that I had known that was in charge of those growing areas got a call from a person that became a good friend of mine, a guy by the name of Gary. And he called my other friend and wanted to know if he'd be interested in going to the Philippines to do a consulting job. And my friend said, no, but I know a guy I think would be perfect for you. And he called me up and says, hey, I got some exciting news for you. How'd you like to go to the Philippines? And I'm thinking, what for? And he goes, I got a consulting job I think you'd be perfect for. And I said, well, I'll at least hear him out. So we set up a breakfast meeting, and my friend Gary and his brother met with me and my friend, and we went and had breakfast. And I basically told them what I did, how I did it, how I approached business, what I looked at, all the many, many crops I dealt with. And they said, well, sure, what would it take to get you there? And I gave them a price and told them what I wanted in terms of expenses. And they said, okay, we'll check it out. Well, later that day, they called me right back and says, how soon can you go? To which I thought to myself immediately, doggone, that was quick. I should have probably charged them more. But what I was getting was substantial, so I said, sure. So we set up a date, made flight arrangements, and I was going with my new friend, Gary. And we had met up before we left and had gotten to know him a little bit more. And we got our flight set going out of San Francisco. And we went to the airport I remember it really well because it was on Easter. I had my family out for Easter, and Gary and his wife showed up and picked me up, and off we went to San Francisco, where Gary's wife was going to drop us off and then take the car back so they would come get us when we got back. So anyway, we get over there. Everything's going fine. We're talking a lot about this, getting to know each other a little better. And we go up to the ticket counter, and I check in and give my passport, and everything's cool, and they give me the bag tags, and off my luggage goes. And I turn around and waiting for Gary to get through, and the gal at the counter says, I'm sorry, Gary, but you can't fly. And he goes, why can't I? And he goes, well, you don't have enough time on your passport. You're less than 6 months, which I learned a valuable lesson. If you're going to fly international, always check that passport and make sure you got more than 6 months, or they will deny you that flight. So we checked into it for a while, and finally she says, no, I checked with my supervisor, and he absolutely says you can't fly because you have less than 6 months on your passport. So we got out of line and went over to the side, and Gary asked me, he says, well, and I said, well, I don't think I'm getting my luggage back, so I guess I'm going. I didn't know who I was going to see. I knew their name, didn't know who I was going to see, but here I am. at the airport, checked in, ready to go. So we talked there for a little bit. So Gary took a couple pictures of me and shipped those to the Philippines, so they knew what I looked like when I got off the plane. And then I got her phone number, the person I would be meeting, and I said, okay. And he says, you sure you're good with this? I said, yep, it's an adventure. Let's go. He said, well, I'm going to go and get my passport reissued, and I'll be over there as soon as I can. So, okay. So I went up to the, we were flying business class, so I went up to the lounge, immediately had some alcoholic refreshments to kind of calm my nerves, and waited until my flight got ready to go. And off we went, and flew over, landed in, I think we went into Hong Kong first and changed planes in Hong Kong, which I'd never been to that airport, which is absolutely a monster, but navigated my way through the airport and went on over to, got on the next flight that went into Manila, and flew into Manila. And Gary had told me, he says, when you get off, you're going to follow that out after you get through customs. You can go down the stairs, turn to the left. That'll be where you pick up your baggage. From there, just go straight out to the curb and, call her and she'll come pick you up. Okay. And so I said, okay. So I went down. Sure enough, there's the escalator. Walked down, or it took me down to the bottom. I walked over, and sure enough, here came my luggage after a while. I got my phone out and called that number, and sure enough, she answered, and she said, we'll be there in less than 5 minutes. So I walked out to the curb. I'm waiting there, a little apprehensive. Pretty soon, here came a kind of, I think it was a Toyota van-like, which we had captain seats in the back, really, really nice on the inside. Anyway, door slides open. She has her own driver, and she said, Bill? And I said, that's me. And I says, glad you're here. And so I got in with her, and off we went. I talked about soils and fertility all the way to the hotel that she had me staying at. And it was interesting because she always reminded me later, because we had a long relationship, and I'll probably have another long story about the Philippines in a future travel log if it works. But we talked about, you gave me my first lesson. You started teaching me the minute you got into the van. And we always joked about it, that I was her soil and fertility teacher. So she took me over there, said she'd be back in the morning to pick me up. And sure enough, fabulous accommodations. I will tell you that I was spoiled rotten over there. This family did such a great job of taking care of me. I was always secure, always comfortable, the best meals, the best hotels, the best of everything. It was really fabulous experience. And I can't be more grateful to that family and everything they did for me with my consulting career. But in our talks, we talked about what the purpose, what you wanted me to accomplish while I was here. And one of the things that she explained is that her family was a large fertilizer importer into the Philippines, and their customers was the Philippine farmers. And she knew that they were not doing as well as they should be. And she's very philanthropic about this, in that I want the best for my farmers, and they need help because nobody here was giving them any agronomic expertise. So I said, okay. So I said, I think I can help your farmers. And so a lot of these farmers had small plots of land. We call it a hectare or 2 hectares. So somewhere between 2.5 to 5 acres. And that was all they had to grow food, not only for them, just for their family. And they were struggling to grow enough to feed their family. So it gives you an idea how low the production was. And a lot of these were basic crops, rice particularly, because of the high rainfall, and a lot of the terrain and soil types were good. Plus, culturally, rice was a big staple of their diets. And yet they were still having to buy rice. And even the country itself was having to import quite a bit of rice because their farm was such poor production. They just needed some education, and she wanted to give them that. So we started over that, and that started a relationship that I still cherish today with that family. They were just, I felt like we were really doing some good for a lot of people, giving them the basics, not only just giving them something to eat, but something nutritious, because we could build up the quality of the products, the rice and other crops that they were doing. There was also sugarcane that they grew, and that was more for cash, a crop that they could sell to the local mill where they would turn it into sugar for sale. So we did some of that. We had other people that were had livestock that they needed better quality of inputs to their cattle, both dairy cows and beef cows. Also, they had to also feed, and this gives you a little bit of idea where they were. A lot of their power was by carabao, which is like a water buffalo. And that was their power, and that's how they tilled their ground. And one of the first things I looked at as we traveled around, because over the next 7 to 10 days, I did sometimes 2 and 3 different programs for different groups of farmers. I had a big group at the University of the Philippines in Calumba, and it happened to be a present. I met the mayor of Calumba, which is a really kind of a famous city. It's there where their George Washington of their country was a guy by the name of Rizal, and he was revered by anyone, and that was his home city. And so we at that time established with the mayor at that time, we wanted to do something to encourage Philippine farmers. And that's where we came up with the idea of the 2 Farm Awards. And that was to recognize and give monetary support to the outstanding farmers of different crops, everything from rice to sugarcane to dairy. And even we had fishermen where they were growing fish, in ponds to basically feed themselves and others in the area. So the fisheries, and we had these different awards that we gave there. And I was really honored that my friend Gary and I were both involved in the judging of the very first 2 Farm Awards that they put on. And actually was able to go back when they actually awarded them which was much later after I had been there this very first time. So we went around and talked to a lot of farmers in different areas, growing different crops. And my friend Gary says, I don't know how you do this, but I've never had a hard time talking, and you might have noticed that by listening to these podcasts. Things just come to me when I look around. I don't know how many times I've put down a whole half an hour to an hour program on the back of a napkin, just with a few bullet points, and then start. And of course, my wife tells me you talk too much, but it's been a good career that by being able to relate to farmers and talk to them one-on-one, it's been one of my most favorite things I've done in my consulting career. But with these talks, we were in anywhere from a group of 8 to 10. She took me to some of her most influential clients, and we just talk one-on-one sometimes. And I talk about what they're growing and how they're doing it, and maybe some ideas of how to improve what they were currently doing. We saw sugarcane that had been a lot of wind there. Obviously, they have typhoons frequently through there, and so a lot of the sugarcane would just be flat. Well, and one of the things I pointed out to him, I says, here's how you tell if the sugarcane is short of phosphorus, or it could be short of potassium. Potassium giving you cell wall strength to give you lots of strength of the stalk to be able to withstand some wind. But if it blows the whole plant over and uproots it, you probably have a phosphate problem because you're not getting it rooted in properly, because phosphate was really important to the rooting in of every plant. But we looked at these different things. She even had a dinner one time for me with a lot of people. But it was interesting to see wherever I went, I was always welcome. And I was very humbled by the fact that a lot of these people struggled to make just live, just have enough food to live in the conditions they were in. And yet, if I would come by, they always wanted me to come in and sit down, have something to eat with them. In other words, be gracious and give to me when they really probably should be keeping it for themselves. I always felt very humbled that they wanted to do that. So it was always really, to me, made me say, I really have to do my best to do the best for them so that they can improve their crops and improve their standard of living. And in this area that I worked with so many times, it's probably one of the best things I think I've done in consulting is to help people at a very, very basic level to allow them a better quality of life and for them to be so appreciative. But we flew quite a bit over the Philippines over time on some different trips. A lot of travel by the roads, by going up and down the Philippines. We went up into, and you wouldn't think it, but some places are very mountainous, particularly if you're on even the biggest islands, Mindanao, and also Luzon, which is where I wouldn't say a lot, most of the people, but a lot of the people of the Philippines live there because of the major metropolis of Manila and the suburbs around it, the different ones, Makati, etc. There's many towns right around Manila. Anyway, north of there, though, you can get into some very mountainous stretches, and we were able to see they call them the hanging rice fields up there on the really, really steep hillsides. And it was up in a place called Benguet. And these places, they would have water at the top of these mountains and just step it down on the angle all the way down. They'd have little patties set out on the sides. Just a beautiful, I can still remember seeing it the first time and how beautiful it was. We had people also on other sides where they were growing vegetables on the same terracing. In addition to these rice terraces, they had vegetable terraces that they would just take it on the angle, go out so far and then drop to the next terrace. And they were able to really take good advantage of their water as they moved it from terrace to terrace and letting gravity be the delivery service for their water. But we would be driving by the road and all of a sudden a head would pop up, and then he'd have a long pole strapped over his back with baskets on each end of it, and he would be carrying them from the lower terraces up to the road where they would literally be loading them. They picked them that day. They would load them on trucks, all by hand like that. Then those trucks would drive from there to Manila and then go to the market. There was a big market where all the people growing produce would be there at the end of the day, literally in the middle of the night. So by the next morning, stuff was picked in the morning, sitting there in Manila and by the next morning up for sales to local groceries, to the markets around there. It was just absolutely fabulous to see there. I will say, though, the traffic was horrendous. slow traffic. I can still remember sitting for hours in traffic jams. But it also, as I look back, was really great because it allowed me a lot of time to spend in talking with my sponsor that had gotten me over there. We had so many good times together, and her and her family. They also had shipping as well as a fertilizer. They manufactured bleach for disinfecting. They manufactured fertilizer, some sulfate of potash in their area. They got a lot of barges of fertilizer, and I helped her in a lot of different ways. My experience not only as an agronomist and consultant, but an experience of working for a farm supply co-op here in California that dealt with fertilizer and handling fertilizer and the different types and making it easier for her to handle things and how to bag it and how to help her with a lot of different products over the time. I remember we did one time where she took me to one of her bagging plants, and they were bagging sulfur, and there was a lot of conditions that I was worried because although it's not explosive, but fertilizer can be quite flammable. Spark can get it started, and then it can basically feed itself and get to be a really hot fire that just feeds itself oxygen from its breaking down, so it continues to burn and burn and burn. So I gave her some tips, and they were helpful to her to be able to help her warehousing and help her bagging and how to do a lot of different things in the fertilizer storage and keeping it dry and anything else that I could help her. We had a great fondness for one another, and still to this day. Both of us, as we near more the end of our career rather than the start, we think back fondly of many things. And there's so many stories I have that I'll take it for chapter 2, the Philippines, right later down the line. But it was one thing that was probably most intriguing was to get to know when you go to the Philippines, the language they speak, the major language they speak is English, but then their own language that they speak is Tagalog. And I didn't understand a word of that, and I still to this day don't understand a word of it. But I was able to navigate and get around very well just because there was so much English spoken in there. But I heard many things about Tagalog and in Tagalog, and sometimes one last story, and I think I'll wrap up chapter 1 here of the Philippines. Is we were out one day, and there were numerous places that we'd went, and I had given probably at least 2, if not 3 presentations. It was very, very late, probably 11, 12 o'clock at night, and we're headed back to Manila, which is another couple hours, so it's not going to be till at least 2 o'clock. It'd been a long day. And all of a sudden, we kind of pull off the main road and we start going down a little gravel road. And then pretty soon we come out into the middle, literally of nowhere. It's jungle everywhere. And there's a big iron gate. And our driver gets out and knocks on the gate. They come out. They speak something in Tagalog, of which I know nothing. And they open the gate and we pull in there. They had this huge open air barn with big tables down the middle. And they had been talking, and I didn't realize this because I didn't understand any Tagalog. And they're talking back and forth to the owners, wanting them to open up, literally, in the middle of the night to feed. There was probably at least a dozen of us at this time on this bus that was driving out there. And she had such an influence with people, and everybody in this country really knew her, particularly around Manila, and had great affection for her. She was really and still is a really great philanthropist and a supporter of the Philippine people. And anyway, in the middle of the night, if you can imagine, a dozen people sitting down at a table, and they come out, food's already prepared, they're bringing it out, they're feeding us, and I question anybody in the U.S. that you would have the servers come out in the middle of the night serving a dozen people and being the most cheerful, smiling, wanting to know what else they could do for us in every way possible. It was just a culture change that I had never seen before. And I'm thinking, how did I get into this place? I have no idea where it is. I couldn't go back to it if I tried. Middle of the jungle, an eating place opened up in the middle of the night for my sponsor and all of us to be able to eat before we went back to Manila. Because, in Manila, it'd be a little bit dicier to get somebody to open up for it. But these people in the rural areas, great food, great time, one I will always cherish and remember. So I think as I'm putting down this podcast, think of all the other things I can talk about. And I'm not sure that 2 episodes will be enough. It was my first overseas consulting where I was really doing it. And it turned into a very, very life-changing, memorable experience, and one that, but I'm both proud of and wonder how I was so lucky to meet the people I met and continue on as friends to this day. It's a wonderful opportunity that I got, and I'm just so glad that all the people that helped me along the way, the Neil Kinsey to get me started down this path, and another guy that was a boss of me as the CEO of Stanislaus Farm Supply when I worked there, Sam Bedencourt, and how he pushed me to be something more than I probably would have ever been. And those people allowed me to get in and get involved in what's become my absolute passion, which is soils and fertility, agronomy in general, and just helping farmers to achieve better quality and higher volumes of whatever crop they want to grow. So I'm going to leave it with that now, and just hopefully you enjoyed that. It was just one snippet of many of the trips I took and things that I looked at around the world. If it's interesting, we'll see by how many people are listening. And if it looks like there's some people that really want to continue to hear some of these, I've got other places and that we can go to around the world that I went to, and some interesting and sometimes funny stories that happened along the way. So until next time, stay curious.
Thank you for another absolutely phenomenal episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell, Bill. I'm sure everyone very much so enjoyed listening to your story about the Philippines and your time traveling over there, or one of your many times traveling over there. For everyone listening, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And like Bill said, always stay curious.